So Thomas, thanks so much for coming on firstly. And how have you been recently? I know you've got a very busy schedule, so how are things going?
Yeah, no, pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. Really looking forward to speaking with you both. I think how have I been recently? Good, very busy, lots of moving pieces, a young family, lots of work commitments, business growth. And obviously lots going on in terms of the football world as well. So a long and challenging season in football, but that's part and parcel of the game. But generally, I would say in a really good place and enjoying the process of the journey which I'm on.
Yeah, and we're really excited to get into that journey today. You're someone who we've wanted to speak to for a while, because not only have you achieved a lot on the pitch, but you've done a lot off it, and you're not confined to just being an athlete. So it's all really interesting to us. But if we could start perhaps right at the beginning, you were a very talented footballer coming through the ranks at Arsenal to start with. Could you tell us a bit about that journey and that disappointment you had when at age 15 you were released by Arsenal, and what you learned from that?
Yeah, it was a unique experience, definitely, because I was, from 5 years old, I loved football, and it was a passion of mine. I wanted to become a footballer, and at 10 I was sort of scoring 80 goals a season in my Sunday league, and parents were talking about me, and then scouts began coming, and it was like, what's a scout? And you're just a kid, you just want to play football. And so eventually at 10 Arsenal came to my dad, their head scout, and said, can he come for a tournament in Watford with other teams, and he'll play for Arsenal within this tournament. And at the time it was Roy Massey and Dermot Drummy was the coach, and went to the tournament, played, ended up scoring sort of like 10 goals in 5 games in that mini tournament. Played with the likes of Jay Simpson, Keith West, who's now an entrepreneur, went on a different path. Just crazy memories when looking back. But yeah, and from that moment on, Arsenal were like, we want to keep him. He's got an exceptional talent. We think that he's got the potential to have a career. So at 10 years old, I was into a professional environment in the sporting world, which again gave me so much value, so much experience and learning, but it was obviously challenging, because all of a sudden you're enjoying football, but then there's the pressure of, okay, well then next season are you going to stay at Arsenal? How does it happen? And then you sort of realize that, you've come in and a few boys have left, so it's like, I want to stay here, but then so then it creates a different dynamic, which at that age you're not really prepared for, because no one talks you through it. Your parents haven't been through it, the parents of the other players haven't been through it, and oftentimes the coaches are still young coaches, so they're probably not communicating in a way which really helps nurture you as a player. So I would say at that age, you literally enter into an environment which is dog eat dog. You have to be the best every single day. But that's important, because that's what football is like, at the top level, and even more so. So anyway, 5 years at Arsenal, went through the ranks, enjoyed it, technically, tactically, a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, got to head down to their training ground, first team training ground, Shenley, met the likes of Vieira, Bergkamp, Pires, it was Henry, all of these greats,
So cool.
And as a sort of 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old, it was phenomenal. And at 15, I hadn't grown, so I was very slight, very skinny, very small, the smallest in the squad. And Liam Brady, who was an Arsenal great, was the academy manager at the time, and he said, look, we don't know if physically you're going to be strong enough to become a professional, but he said, you've got a wonderful left foot, and he said, what we can do, you can stay for another year, but if you don't grow, we won't keep you. And but we think you have got what it takes to be a footballer from a technical perspective, but obviously physicality in sport is everything. And so he said, we can keep it for another year, or you can look at other clubs and other options and see if you can have a club which is going to give you that security. So obviously creates fear, uncertainty, doubt. As a 15-year-old, you're hearing these things which, you know, you're being judged. You know, how do you deal with being judged as a child? And I think, but that was part of the journey. And so at that time, it was like, okay, well, what options are there? Let's have a look at the other options. And Fulham, Watford, Reading, Charlton, all of their academy managers were aware that I could potentially be available as a kid, and so they all met with me. They took me down to their training grounds, they took me to their stadiums, and it was Brendan Rodgers at Reading, who was the academy manager, who took me, my family, my dad, to the Medeski Stadium, which was still relatively new at that time, and he said, we're creating, you know, a real good philosophy here. We want players who are technically good, but also have the mentality to have a career. And so it was Brendan Rodgers who brought me to Reading as a 15-year-old. And that was my journey, because they offered me a professional contract. You know, as a 15-year-old, it offers you that level of security, and there was a channel into the first team to then try and forge a career into professional sports. And so by this time, 15, I had probably seen in all of the age ranks within Arsenal probably around 200 boys come and go. So these are 200 boys who had dreams of becoming a professional, but then effectively didn't make it. So I was learning very quickly that it's such a ruthless industry, and it's so competitive, because at the end of the day, every single boy, you know, either wants to become, you know, a professional footballer, or, you know, or celebrity or whatever. But every kid I know wants to be a footballer. So it's more competitive than getting into Oxford or Cambridge. So yeah, that was my journey from then into the world of professional sports. So that's how it began.
And yeah, you're right in saying that journey, it becomes so ruthless early on. It probably set you up so well for when you actually ended up playing professional sport, that realizing how ruthless an industry it is. If we go into you with turmeric, you had a few injuries early on, didn't you? And then the way you discovered turmeric was through, you know, finding out the information online and really seeking information about how your leg could get better and how you could reduce pain. So could you just tell us a little bit about discovering turmeric through your injuries and how that ultimately led you to finding something as good as the turmeric herb? Yeah,
definitely. So 15, left Arsenal, signed for Reading. Reading were keen to fast track me into the first team. So they wanted me to play in the first team as potentially a 16-year-old, which again would have been, you know, sort of a record for them, you know, youngest ever player to play in their first team. And we had a really good group of players in Reading, you know, myself, Gylfi Sigurdsson, who now plays for Everton FC, captains Iceland, Alex McCarthy, who's now goalkeeper, you know, England goalkeeper and goalkeeper for Southampton, Alex Pearce, who's had a phenomenal career, you know, at Reading, Derby, Millwall, Jem Karajan, who's played in the Champions League for Galatasaray, you know, to name a few. There's more as well. And so they were all in our age group, and so they knew they had a, you know, sort of a good group of young boys to come through and actually have careers and add value to the club. So 15, signed for them, was playing reserve team football almost instantly. And reserve team football, that's men's football. So I was playing with, you know, 28-year-olds, 30-year-olds, and I still, bearing in mind I'd left Arsenal because I was small. You can imagine how physically challenging that was, but I was still doing well, and, you know, was playing well in these games. And so I signed in the summer. October time, we were playing Milton Keynes and in the reserve team, and done well, you know, had a really good first half, and I think the centre half just thought, you know, I'm just going to nail this guy, he's annoying me. So first challenge in the second half, I've touched the ball around the corner and he's come in knee high with his foot and effectively snapped my knee in half. So I ruptured my cruciate knee ligament, and I had no idea what had happened at that time. So I was on the floor, excruciating pain, tried to walk, tried to run it off, couldn't, came off, into the car on the way home, knee just blew up, was massive, 2-3 times the size, couldn't bend, flex my knee. Next few days, had to go to, have an MRI, go see the doctor. The doctor then sent me to the surgeon. The MRI comes back, my anterior cruciate ligament had snapped along with every other ligament in my knee. And the surgeon said to me, you're going to need an operation. Just be prepared. You'll probably not play again for another year. The rehabilitation is long, is hard, and you're probably not really going to play at the same level that you were before. Okay, fine. Took it all on board. I wanted to become a professional, footballer. So had the surgery, came back, a year's worth of rehabilitation, got back. Within a few weeks of playing and training again, the same injury happened, but this time it was, with no contact. And basically because I didn't really have the right rehabilitation, and that's no discredit to the club and the physios at the time. It's just that there wasn't enough detail and, focus on the core areas of my body, starting from nutrition all the way to movement and the mechanical movement that you have to, the patterns you have to move in. There was nothing. It was just leg presses, single leg balance, and unfortunately that wasn't enough. So ended up rupturing my cruciate knee ligament again. Same surgeon, same doctor, sat in his room. He said, you're going to need another surgery. You're probably never going to play without pain and restriction again, and you certainly won't play at the level of sport that you thought you were going to play at. And so to hear that was just, devastating. But I was determined to play, and I said, well, I'm going to come back. I'm going to give it my best. And so went through the rehabilitation again, began seeing people outside of the club, sort of specialists in movement and strength, really built my body up to make it as strong as possible, and came back a year later, began playing, but I was just with constant pain and constant swelling. So I'd have a training session and my knee would literally completely swell up. I would try and play after 20 minutes of a training session. I would then get, stiffness, restriction in my knee, so I'd have to stop early. And so the club doctors at the time began prescribing me medication, so anti-inflammatories, and I began popping these anti-inflammatories like Smarties, and the ones that I was having have actually been banned now for adolescents, for kids who haven't, who aren't fully mature, so non-adults, whereas I was having these as a 17-year-old literally like Smarties, and within a few weeks of having them, my body just reacted, had adverse effects to them. So I started passing blood in my urine, couldn't sleep, had nausea. So I had to stop taking these drugs, which were taking the edge off the pain that I was experiencing. But at the same time, I was still had this pain and this restriction. So I literally remember I'd played a reserve game, finished the reserve game, got home. My dad was at my house, was in real pain, went to walk up the stairs, and I just literally physically couldn't walk up the stairs. The pain in my knee was so much, and I literally broke down, was in tears. It was like, there must be a solution. There must be another option to support my health and my recovery. And so that started at that point. It was like, we have to find another way. So me and my dad, we just went on a research binge. We went to the library, we looked on what was on the internet around natural nutrition, recovery, reduction of inflammation, and we began identifying all of these individual ingredients which were used, whether in Eastern medicine, in Ayurvedic medicine, or in natural herbal cultures. And the ingredients were pineapple fresh, pomegranate fresh, watermelon, ginger, and then subsequently turmeric root. And so we began looking at how can we get these ingredients. So we went to a few markets, a few food markets, and basically got these natural raw ingredients. And my dad just began testing with these. And as a kid, I was really fussy. So I didn't really like eating anything which wasn't, sort of standard foods. And my diet had consisted of pasta, beans, and chicken, for nearly 7 years now as a young sort of athlete. So my body was nutrient deficient anyway. So my dad literally began getting these blends and like making variations of all of them crushed into, a formula, which eventually turned into a liquid elixir almost. But if it didn't taste good, I would sip it and I'd be like, I couldn't drink that, because I knew I had to take it consistently. And it was all about consistently using the product and using these ingredients to, increase the nutrition levels and the compounds within your body. And so eventually it was like, got to a point where I tried it and it was actually really nice. So literally had a full, sort of shot of it, and it was just this golden liquid at the time. And the first full shot I had of it, I remember thinking, wow, that really knocked my socks off, because as I said, up until that point, my diet just consisted of bland foods. And so it was my only option. So it was like, well, yeah, I'm just going to commit to this nutrition, this natural, way of eating. And I literally had 2 or 3 of these, little shots, which at the time we were just putting in these little glass bottles and sealing them, making them every few days. And within a few weeks, I began noticing, a little bit less restriction in my knee. And I was like, okay, this is good. It's positive. Still had it, fundamentally. But it was around 6 weeks after using these shots every single day where I woke up, my usual routine, would go into the bathroom, get into the shower, had the shower on, and I literally realized that was the first time in over 2.5 years that I'd woken up without pain and restriction in my knee. And it was a light bulb moment for me, because up until that point in time, I believed everything anyone told me, sort of from a position of authority. So if the doctor told me something, it would be like, okay, I have to take that as word, and I'm just going to have to work, to try and, get through it. But seeing the impact that a natural product and natural nutrition could have outside of what I'd been told of the symptoms and the conditions that I should have within my injury, completely changed my life and completely changed my perspective of how to view life as well. And so ever since that moment, I've had these shots on a daily basis. They were my secret weapon throughout the whole of my career. I'd have a shot a day, and I began noticing that I would recover quicker than my teammates. I wouldn't have as much, I wouldn't get run down as easy. And them beginning to give them to my teammates, they began noticing the benefits as well. We then began giving them to family members and friends just to help with their overall health and wellness. And they began, reporting the same benefits that I had, and other various benefits too, which obviously these natural ingredients can support. And so that was the journey of how the Turmeric Co was ultimately born. And in 2018, I saw a turmeric shot on the shelf in Harrods, and was like, amazing, finally someone's brought these products to market, and bought the whole shelf, took them home, and we went to drink it, and we spat it out because it had been made of apple juice. It was made with turmeric powder, and we realized that actually what was being sold on the market in comparison to what we were making at home was completely different. So in 2016, took us 2 years, and we eventually launched the Turmeric Co in 2018.
Yeah, nice. I think what's so cool about your story and what you've highlighted there as well is that not only your playing career, but founding a successful business has come out of you just seeking out information. I've heard you say before that ignorance is a bit of a choice now. There's so much stuff out there. And your story is just highlighting that there's so many benefits to being intellectually curious and trying to innovate the way you train and the way you go about your business, really.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think from our perspective, innovation was born out of necessity. Like I had no other choice. Like it was either find a solution to help me recover naturally, or forever live in pain. And so it's like, not only live in pain, but not achieve the dreams that I wanted to achieve of being a professional footballer. And so it's back then, we're talking 15 years, we went to the public library. I remember getting a herbal a book on spices from Asia, and it listed these crazy spices, but of them, within them was turmeric and ginger. And so, we were, as you said, we were seeking information, and I think information is so readily available now, and I think it's about actually absorbing that, or being open to that information, then being willing to absorb it, but then really experiencing it firsthand, because at the end of the day, it's about experiencing it. And so when we launched the Turmeric Co., we were offering a product which there were other shots on the market which were marketed as turmeric shots or ginger shots, which had zero function to them. It was basically an apple shot, an apple juice shot. And apple juice is just ultimately high in sugar. So it was how do we then convey the message of our product in comparison to what was a relatively crowded marketplace of inferior products. And so it was all around experience. So we knew we had to get the product in people's hands, because when people use the product, they experience the benefits firsthand, but also they can experience the difference between any other product on the market. So that was a big part of our strategy. And now, as we said, there's tens of thousands of people who use these shots now on a daily basis and are reporting the same benefits that I experienced firsthand 15 years ago across all different, all different ranges of natural support for health. So, yeah, it's gone quick. It still very much feels that we haven't really got going yet, because it is very much the start of the journey. And I think the awareness of natural products and natural nutrition is still so low. So the biggest thing for us now as a brand and, through our products is, creating that education piece, like informing people and getting the product into people's hands so they can experience it firsthand. And I think it's quite interesting. Obviously, we supply numerous elite athletes. Over half of the Premier League players use our product on a daily basis. But when you actually look at, say, for example, our subscribers online, the majority of them are 35 and 45 plus, male and female. So it's people in all walks of life who are actually benefiting from the range. And that was originally, I obviously used it to help me recover specifically from pain. But now what we're seeing is people are using this product as a form of natural nutrition to support a wide array of health benefits.
I think it's an amazing story, and there's so much to unpack with it, and how you've used your negative situation to give birth to this, which is just an incredible business now and helping so many people. One of the things that really strikes me is your determination from the outset. If you take it back to when you got released by Arsenal, you didn't decide to just give up football then. You wanted to carry on. And then when you had your injuries and you went through the rehab and you did the rehab again when you got injured a second time, you were determined to keep going through every single hurdle you had. And that determination is really powerful. And also I think the support from your dad as well, who's been there helping you throughout. That must have been amazing to have that support there as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's an old cliche of, being tough. What is it to be tough really? Like it's not, because you could say to a kid who cries a lot, oh, you need to be tougher, or you could say, big boys don't cry. But really it's about understanding the experience that you're going through and then using that experience to then form you for the better and shape you for the better. And that's really what I've done, in my journey to date, whether it's subconscious or because of the environment that I've been in. I think it's obviously a number of different factors, but the sooner you realize that whatever journey you're going on, it's your own personal journey, and it is ultimately what you make it. So whether you experience highs or lows, what do you then take from those highs and lows to then form your experience moving forward? And I think in terms of life in general, because we have a wealth of information, we now have a transfer of knowledge, a transfer of communication, a transfer of wealth, like that. We can communicate on the fly, and I think with that it creates a lot of variables, and so it creates more things for people to think about. And so when that happens, you can very quickly be influenced too quickly by your external environment, whereas what's important, and whenever you go through a challenging situation, when you get through it, often not, it's because you've gone within yourself and you begin to internalize what you're feeling and what you're thinking and understand what that actually means to you. And from there, you can actually direct your energy in a positive way or in a progressive way to either come through that situation or to make the most of that situation. So I think it's that understanding that ultimately the power of your mind and the influence of external environments or external impacts which happen in your environment, and how you then perceive that and think about it and then begin to take action from that. So it's just the approach to how you think and feel about what you think and are feeling about.
Yeah, I think that's really important, like actually thinking about the scenarios. Let's say you get injured, like you have, taking a step back and actually really thinking about the scenario. And I think with you, one thing that's shone through, and I've heard you in other interviews as well, is gratitude, and you're always very grateful for the moments you're in and whatever happens in your career. Just wondering how grateful you feel to have been able to have the football career you've had. You obviously got promoted to Reading, you obviously played in the Premier League, and obviously you had incredible moments with Wales at the Euros. How grateful do you feel to have been able to do that for however many years?
Yeah, it's phenomenal, and the weird thing is that I now feel at 32 like I am in the best physical shape of my life. Like and the stats show it on whether it's training and games. So it's quite weird because normally obviously as you get older you're physically the standard rhetoric is that your physical condition will deteriorate, whereas mine has been the complete opposite, and I actually feel better after games now. Like as an example, when I play 90 minutes now, I don't get stiff after games. Literally, like it's so strange, and it's because of a combination of everything I've done, whether it's the turmeric shots, whether it's the recovery and the physical work that I do around my body, and obviously then the mental approach to the demand of what you do on a day-to-day basis. But I think there's so much to be grateful about, and I think the career that I've had to date, and will hopefully obviously continue to have is very unique and so much more special to me, given what I had to personally go through. And as I said at the beginning, like everyone's on their own journey, and everyone will make their journey whatever they choose to make it. And so I feel privileged now to be able to be sharing something which fundamentally helped me at my core, and I think if I hadn't have persevered as a 15-year-old, I wouldn't have had the career that I had, but also the Turmeric Co wouldn't have been born. And so there's a lot to come out of it, and a massive amount to be grateful for.
I guess if you think back to being in that room with the doctor saying, do you know what, you're probably not going to be able to play to the level you have done before, at least not with pain. And now to think back and think, actually, I've now achieved what I've done. I've played in the Premier League, I've scored the goal of the Euros, and now I've set up my own company. It must be amazing to think back to where you were to where you are now.
Yeah, no, definitely. And but as you said, even you need people around you, and I've been fortunate enough, my father as well, after that conversation with the surgeon, I left the room, and then the surgeon told my dad he needs to find a different career path. And it was only until I made my Premier League debut that my dad actually told me he had said that to him. So for my dad to have had that determination or the mindset to continue to support me and not waver me from the journey which I was, dedicated to be on, I think is testament. And I've been fortunate enough to have phenomenal people around me, throughout my journey, whether it's Dermot Drummy, who unfortunately passed away. He was the Arsenal Academy coach. Eamon Dolan, who again has passed away. He was the Reading Academy manager. And the likes of, Brendan Rodgers, who helped, gave me my debut at Reading, brought me to the club, and ultimately helped, shape my career and shape me. But fundamentally, everything is external at the end of the day. It's what is, these are all material things, and I think it's actually, that's the core message that I believe, is that it is the journey of you as an individual that you're going on, because whether it's, you know, objects, you know, adulation, like it's all material. It's about what are you experiencing as an individual and what is your own purpose. I think that's really where everything stems from, and is the root of, you know, mental and, you know, physical health.
Yeah, and like you said, throughout your career, there's obviously, with how well you've done, there's a lot of material things that come with it, but I'm sure one of the things that probably gives you the most gratification is doing what you're doing at the moment and building a community around education, and not only helping elite athletes, but you're helping the everyday person live better, live more healthily, and live without pain, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what we're really building is a movement of, you know, movement towards wellness. So it's when customers, you know, purchase the Turmeric Co shots, not only are they going to get the benefit of the product, but they're also habit forming in their own lives. Because when you purchase our range and you say, okay, I'm going to have a shot every morning, when you have that shot every morning, it's almost an affirmation for yourself, because you're saying, I'm choosing health, you know, over, you know, a coffee or a Coca-Cola or a soda drink. No, I'm choosing health. And I think that, knowing that and actually seeing that what we're doing, you know, throughout our, you know, community of customers, you know, which is growing daily, is the biggest humbling factor for me, you know, that I can think of. And I think it goes beyond scoring goals in Euros and scoring goals in the Premier League, and, you know, being, you know, known as a Premier League footballer and the adulation which comes with it. That for me is, you know, in comparison to knowing the impact that we're having with the Turmeric Co, it's almost night and day. And so that doesn't undermine the gratitude that I have for being a professional footballer, and, you know, understanding that this is every kid's dream of what, you know, I've been able to live through. But again, no one sees the hard work, and no one sees everything behind the scenes. And so no one saw the journey that I went on as starting from a 5-year-old to then have the career of making my international and Premier League debut at 21 and 22 years of age. You know, no one saw that 17-year journey. They just saw the end product on TV. And it's the same with the Turmeric Co. No one saw the tears that went through it, the pain, the struggle that we had to go through to actually bring a high quality product, which is different to every single product, with different values to every single consumer packaged goods business in the world, to market. And I think, you know, it's knowing that that journey and understanding that that purpose runs through not only the business itself, but the people behind the business, and the, you know, ethos and the mission of that is, you know, for me the most humbling thing.
Yeah, it's incredible, and you're right when you say there, it's a lot of hard work. Both a professional footballing career is very demanding, but also running your own business as well. How do you find the time to balance both those things in your life?
Yeah, you'll have to ask my wife. No, so, and I've got a young family as well, and I think it's just, firstly, you need good people around you. So that's the biggest thing. I've always been fortunate enough to have that. So we've got a phenomenal team, you know, phenomenal loved ones, you know, phenomenal family, phenomenal friends. But for me personally, it's understanding that physically football, you know, challenges me. So every day I have to physically be at it. Like I said, realizing as a 10-year-old, I'm now judged every single day. Like, that doesn't change, you know. So learning that then was critical for, you know, having the career, you know, that I've had, and, you know, being in that environment. But you very quickly realize that the mentality that you have to have is, I'm being judged every day, but I actually don't care, you know, because I'm doing it for me. I want to be here, so I'm choosing to step across the white line. I'm choosing to, you know, to experience what I want to experience. And so when you have that mentality, you're able to express yourself on the football pitch. And I think physically, from a physical perspective, 100%, like, football is, you know, one of the most competitive sports, you know, in the world, because you have to be able to run, you have to be strong, you have to be able to compete, and then on top of that you have to have a level of skill. You have to be able to play football, and this and then alongside that, tactically, the level of the game now at the highest level is, you have to tactically understand what you have to do at every single minute of every single game, and they're the things that no one really sees. So physically, football is very demanding, but then you get the downtime of resting. And so a lot of people, a lot of athletes will play video games from 1 in the afternoon to 2 in the morning. A lot of my teammates do that on a regular. Call of Duty, it's called like Battlezone, what's it called?
Is it Battlefield or something?
We're not big players, but
Battlezone. So there's one where you like play with each other. It sounds quite
something
cool.
like that.
Yeah, so I don't have the time to do it, but so that all people, footballers will play golf or take up a hobby. And so what I've done is, I've invested my time where I would be resting, from football where I am resting, and dedicated my sort of mental capacity into building a business and building a team and building a community around a purpose-driven business and brand.
Yeah, that's cool. And obviously, like Cam said, and like you've said, you incredibly stressful like football career as well as owning a business. It's obviously you're very strict with your time. But you've mentioned there as well about rest and downtime and how important it is spending time with your family as well. And I just sort of wanted to ask you, something that I've seen recently through social media and LinkedIn is this sort of hustle culture that's infiltrating and permeating into people's mindsets when they sort of have to start a business. How important do you think that is? But also on the flip side, how important do you think it is to have downtime and have rest and spend time with your family and do all the things for yourself as well?
Yeah. I'd say hustle culture is a myth. It's a myth because it's like you don't work hard, you work smart. So it's like you can achieve the same outcome with 1 hour of work that you could achieve with 10 hours of work, but the way that you've structured that work, the way that you've allocated resources to achieve that same outcome could be completely different. So it's like people get locked into hustling, and it's like, I need to keep working and do this work, and actually no, something that I was fortunate enough to learn very quickly is work smart. So for every business owner or young entrepreneur looking at, starting up a business, it's like my advice would be is that you want to build a team of people who can replace what you do within that business as quickly as possible. So, and that's the biggest thing that I've, focused on within the Turmeric Co. and within the business itself, is finding, good people who have a skill set within a specific specialized area within the function of the business better than me, and then giving them the freedom to manage and develop that. And I think, so when that comes to hustle culture, I think hustle culture is, as I said, a myth, but at the same time, like it's hard work. Like you still have to. There's no getting about it. So it's just it's understanding that. But then, at what level does that hard work tip over and actually become detrimental to your life? So it's all a balance.
I guess that's pretty similar to football training as well. Like you can easily go through the motions, spend hours on the training pitch, but not actually improve. You've got to test yourself on the football pitch in areas where it's going to improve you, or maybe your weakness areas, and that's going to help you advance. So it is about working smart, and that's, I guess, a transferable skill between football, your on the pitch career, and your business as well. Are there any other transferable skills, would you say, between the two?
I think that there's a lot. I think what you just said there, I think is quite interesting, because it's if you when you want to, you want to be able to apply your skills or apply what you're doing in a specific area. So that's really important, because that's often not when you learn. So you learn through experience, but then it's from that, it's actually saying, well, how can I then improve and optimize from there, and take that forward. So it's at the end of the day, it's all part of a journey, and often not, again, that hustle culture and that sort of grafting mentality, and it stems from fear, because it's like, well, if I don't do that, then I'm not going to have the success, and so a lot of it is always fear-based, which is often because of what we are thinking internally, which actually probably isn't the reality. So it's like being fearful around not achieving your dreams. So it's like in a football perspective, you could argue that, okay, you achieved your dreams, you wanted to play in the Premier League, but actually that was an experience. So did you enjoy that experience? Did you live in the moment of that experience? And if you're fearful, you're never going to live in that moment, which then really means that you're never going to express yourself, because when you're in fear, you can never express. Fear is restriction is contraction, but the opposite of fear is expression. So it's almost like realizing that, and say, so now with the Turmeric Co, for example, of course, what do we want to achieve with it? Yeah, it'd be amazing to be a massive global brand. People are all around the world using it, but that vision or that mission or that objective, that can create fear, which is then like, oh, well, what if we don't do that? What if we can't communicate the message to people? People don't use inferior products and actually, choose to use them as opposed to using the product range. Well, actually, if you live in that state, then you're not going to enjoy the process of actually the journey that we're on. Mm-hmm. So it's, stripping it back, it's like sort of living in a state of, without fear, really, I think is the message there. Mm.
And that fear is obviously a massive thing. I'm sure being a professional footballer, there are loads of fears and anxieties that come with it, about getting picked, about your performance, all those kind of things. And I think mental health is something that's very underreported in football, and you've been very outspoken about that. Does it feel good that you're working on a product that, because of its anti-inflammatory properties, actually has links to reduction in depression as well? Does that make you feel really good and give you a bit of purpose with that as well?
Yeah, I think in terms of the product and the ingredients that we use, it's a food, so it's completely natural. So that's first and foremost. But on the flip side of that, it's foods which really haven't been researched fully. So we really don't know the full extent of the potential health benefits of the ingredients that we use. So it's like, as an example, there are studies ongoing now around the impact of fresh raw turmeric and Alzheimer's. It's like, well, that would be phenomenal, but still it's only a food. So it's it's sort of a weird place where we sit in, because it's food, not medicine, but you could argue that food is medicine, because what we put into our bodies has a direct impact on health. So, so to your question, I think 100% knowing that the potential benefits of what we're doing by making these raw, natural, high quality ingredients accessible to people in all walks of life in a convenient manner is a unique feeling, because it's like, I know now my granny could go and have a turmeric shot, where she wouldn't have to spend half an hour in the kitchen, making the raw turmeric, cleaning up after her, and then consuming what probably wouldn't taste nice, the product that she would drink. So knowing that we've accomplished that, and now we're bringing it to more and more people is of course, very unique.
Yeah, and I think the fact that it's got holistic benefits for everyone, for your average Joe to your professional athlete, and it could be enhancing their physical abilities, but also mentally as well, as Joel's mentioned, and that's something we'd like to discuss now, because we're in quite a unique position here. We're sat across from a footballer who is open and vocal about the mental side of sport and mental health in sport, which is a bit of a taboo subject potentially with some athletes. So it'd be great to just talk about that for a moment, and why you think it's maybe such a taboo subject within football.
Yeah, so mental health, or the state of mental health in sport and in football is extremely underreported, like to the level which, if it was exposed, you would not believe it. And the reason why it is underreported is because it's such a competitive industry and such a competitive sport that identifying mental health is seen as a weakness. So the example being, you're fearful about the upcoming game on a Saturday and you're scared, and I can tell you for a fact, players at the highest level still feel fear of playing professional football. My teammates, I've had teammates who would vomit in the toilet before going out onto the pitch. So that's because of fear, right? So that is a issue with mental health, because you're feeling something which you shouldn't be feeling. Arguably, these players have worked their whole life to get onto a professional football pitch at the highest level. Surely it should all be about enjoyment, experiencing the moment, loving what you're doing. So my point is that this feeling of fear, or the issue of mental health, because it's seen as weakness, i.e. if you went to the manager and said, "Hi Gaffer, I'm really scared about Saturday's game, and I'm just, I don't think I can do it." The reaction is going to be, "Okay, no problem. See you later."
Yeah.
You come out of the team, you won't be involved. And so, but that's not the manager's fault, because the manager is under pressure. He has to win games, otherwise he'll lose his job. He probably has a mortgage, he has commitments, he has his reputation, he has his ambition. So because it's such a competitive industry and it's so cutthroat, it doesn't serve for openness around mental health. And I think that's the sort of where we're at with it currently. And really what that means is that because of the state of mental health, these professional athletes are looking at ways to release them, the feelings that they're experiencing, and that comes in the form of, addiction, abuse, whether it's drugs, alcohol, gambling. Like, these are all indicators of, an issue with mental health. And so, as I said, it's rife within sport, and something fundamentally needs to change, because if it doesn't, we're going to see more and more athletes, effectively harmed, and their families around them harmed, and ultimately resulting in loss of life. And I think really the flip side is that it's such a beautiful game. There's so much value and so much joy and emotion which it gives. That's really what needs to be harnessed, and that needs to be the focus. And so from an infrastructural level, that something needs to change.
Do you think there's a level of superficiality with it then? A club will post on World Mental Health Day a picture on their Instagram, or like you said, the FA will do an initiative. But in reality, if you had to go to your manager, there's not that level of support there. Does that almost frustrate you that it's quite superficial? Yeah,
definitely. And I think it's at the minute it is that is the situation. And I think it's very unique if you find a club who put the welfare of their players truly first. And that's not disrespectful to the clubs, or really that's not, you could argue it's not even the club's fault. There's no blame attached to it, because they need to get the best, and it's a game which is driven on results, driven on winning, and the margins in sport are so small. So it's like winning and losing is a hair. Often it's literally, but by a percentage that you can either win or you can lose. But that's what makes it beautiful, and that's what makes it so engaging, and why fans, supporters, communities, why it's called a beautiful game, and why there's so much passion around it is because of those variables. You know, it stimulates people, you know, immensely, and I think that's something to be championed, but at the same time it needs to be acknowledged that the players and the managers involved in the game are human and have feelings, have emotions, have fears, have uncertainty, and have doubt. And so that shouldn't be shamed and hidden away and brushed under the carpet, which is what has been happening to this moment in time. That actually needs to be spoken about, you know, pulled through, communicated, and actually identified and supported.
You've put it there really powerfully and eloquently, and it is that case of making these athletes seem as human, so people realize that what they say about them, it doesn't have an impact because they have emotions too. But if we unpack what you say about it's that fear that's a big contributor to these mental health issues within football, what would you say is the biggest fear that they're feeling? Is it a fear of not fulfilling a potential? Is it a fear of what fans might or media might say about them? Where do you think that fear comes from?
That's the incredible thing. It's there's so many things to be fearful about as a professional footballer. You know, You can be ridiculed, you could get nutmegged, you could score an own goal, get abused by your fans, you could get abused by your manager, you get abused by your teammates. But it's, as a player, you know, what should be communicated to players who are experiencing this fear is actually like going into it and identifying it. So they need personal support with what they're thinking, and it stems back to what I said before around understanding what you're thinking and how that makes you feel, because how you think will determine what you feel, and what you feel will then determine what you think. So if you're in a negative cycle, you get locked in a loop which you cannot get out of, and that loop is fear. So the example would be, I'm worried about what the fans are gonna say on social media if I make a mistake. So then how does that make you feel? Fearful, insecure, worry. That then creates more thoughts, which, okay, what if then, you know, there's 20,000 fans and not 10,000 fans? And so you get locked in this loop. So the point is, and where it's completely being missed, is no one is going in and actually giving players this support of how they are thinking and how that's making them feel. Because if you understand that, it's, why are you feeling like that? Well, why am I feeling like that? Because I want to give the best that I can give. Okay, well, if you make a mistake, does that mean you haven't given the best that you want to give? Well, no, it doesn't. Okay, so do you really need to feel like that? And should you really then be thinking about it? Well, no. So then what can you think about? Giving the best. Okay, well then how can you do that? Work hard. So then all of a sudden you give these players two things to focus on: work hard and give your best, whatever that may be. And football's incredible. There's a winner and there's a loser every single time. So you can't win all the time, but it's understanding that this is the journey, this is the process. So that level of work and that level of detail, which at a club level or at a macro level is very difficult to implement, because it needs to be done at a micro level. You need to have that one-on-one discussions with these players.
Well, when Cam and I started this project, we were trying to explore the mental side of sport, and we thought that would go into sports psychology and mental health, and the two wouldn't really be that linked. But you're so right, as time's gone on, we've discovered the crossover between them. And if there was a space where people could rid their anxieties and as well understand the triggers that might cause them to have that fear, they'd ultimately play better. So it is all linked, like you say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's not only in sport, it's in what's happening outside of our lives. Like, everyone's got fears, everyone's got uncertainties, everyone's got ambitions, You guys doing this podcast, a phenomenal podcast. It's like, you've got an ambition for this, but that ambition could create fear, or it could create creativity, joy, and experience for the journey. What it boils down to is how you are perceiving the situation that you're in. And so it really stems on what you are thinking about and how that makes you feel. So it's like you can get really annoyed that one of your classmates has gone on to have a phenomenal career, or that could inspire you. So both of those, it's the same situation, but it's how you think and how it then makes you feel. Because if you think that, wow, that's amazing, and I'm grateful that I've been part of his journey, then all of a sudden that creates positivity and a positive loop of emotions and feelings and thinking, as opposed to that he did that by luck, you know, and you know, he was an idiot anyway. All of a sudden that is going to create a negative loop and a negative cycle, which, and again, so we're talking about it being in sport, in football. Football is hyper focus. Like, it's like everything's like, you know, almost like everything's in HD when it comes to football. You know, it's crazy. So it's not really the reality, but the core essence of it is the environment which everyone has come through. So really we're saying this needs to be influenced at a sports federation infrastructural level, but actually no, it probably should be taught at school. You know, kids in nursery probably should be taught about how they think and how they feel, because that's really how we're going to shape and change a generation for the better.
Exactly. I guess football is just a reflection of society, isn't it? So any issue you have in football, more likely it's going to be a broader reflection of society and a bigger problem in society. So you've got to address that first. And realistically, it's not necessarily going to be football clubs who are going to be able to come up with initiatives to solve mental health problems. It's got to be much broader than that, and it's got to start from the very top, I guess. So we're coming up to the end here now. Thanks again for your time. Just before we go, I've got to ask you about your goal at the Euros. It's one of the highlights of your career. It got nominated for a Puskas award. It won the goal of the tournament at the Euros, and it was in one of the biggest scenes of international football. What was that moment like, and the impact it had on your career in the aftermath must have been mental?
Yeah. So based on our conversation, like, what do you think I'm going to say, right? It's like, it's all part of that journey. So it's like that, it didn't really, when I look back, of course it was a phenomenal experience, and the emotions in which it created, not only for myself, for the team, but for the nation, and then actually for, you know, probably the world, because, you know, it was viewed by so many people, and it impacted so many people, because it was almost that message of, you know, the small nation, you know, getting through to the semi-finals, beating the number one ranked team in the world, which had, you know, a value of, you know, £1 billion or whatever had been spent on their team. And so, yeah, it was an incredible feeling. But when I look back at it now, and when I was experiencing it, it was just part of that journey. And it was, as I said, it was just a privilege to have experienced that, and to have, you know, to have had that moment. I really don't, it's weird, like, I don't look back and it's not like, yeah, amazing, like, I did that. It's like, well, no, it was just part of that journey. Like, it was no different to me doing that in my garden with my older brother as a 8-year-old, dreaming about doing it. You know, obviously when you did it, you're still the same person. You're still the same, you know, you're not some superhuman, or you're not, you know, you're a real person. So yeah, it was unique. It was a great moment, but it was, as I said, it was just really part of the journey. Yeah.
Like you said, it's obviously an incredible moment, an incredible goal, but it's probably something you played over in your head in the back garden and training a million times anyway. So, you know, I just want to ask one thing. But that fear you're saying that comes with a professional football career, did you have a similar fear when you were building your business? Because I know a lot of sports people will build a business on the side and maybe have a cafe, for example, or they'll do something a bit smaller. But with you were building a multinational e-commerce company. Did you have that fear, and was there any sort of backlash from people in the industry thinking that you wouldn't be able to do it, or you weren't qualified enough to do it? And was there any fear with that?
I think with regards to how I felt about, you know, setting up the business, I think it was more just aligning with that purpose. So when you have a purpose in what you're doing, I think you everything else becomes, you know, almost, you know, rudimentary. It's almost like, well, it has no significance. So whether I was qualified enough or not to create a global digital e-commerce brand, or whether people would accept me for doing that, it was almost by the by because of the purpose. So I never really thought about it in that essence, but what I did think about was, you know, how can we make this work? What does good look like? What does success look like? You know, and again, we align that very closely to the core purpose. So success for this is not, you know, becoming a multi-million-dollar brand. No, success is the amount of people we have an impact on. So it's like, you know, how many is that? Is that 1,000? Is that 10,000? Is it 100,000? Is it 1 million? Is it 10 million? Or is it 1 billion? So it's like, it's down to us now. Again, this is the journey that we're on again. And, you know, that's really, you know, what the focus is. So that, if that sort of answers your question.
Yeah, I think that building of a community is so important. You're leading the way in that as well. There's probably the most famous example is Gymshark. They obviously created such a community around getting fitness into people's everyday lives. And with this, you have the purpose of building a community around enhancing people's lives, and that must just feel amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it goes back to my point, you know we are habit forming for people. And so when people feel the benefit of our range, we know it's because they are also making positive choices in their day-to-day lives, and using our range as, you know, the trigger and the spark for that, you know, is phenomenal.
That's really cool.
And it's obviously part of your journey, and it's a journey that you're going to continue going on over the next few years. Where do you want to take the business? Where do you see it being in 10 years' time, let's say?
Again, I literally, and then so the other thing that we probably didn't touch on is you take it each day as it comes. Like, you don't really look too far ahead. You have a plan, you know, you have a strategy, you understand it, but, you know, I want to go from here to here. Like, people think it's like that. It's not. It's, and all of a sudden you get there. So you have to realize that and acknowledge that. And again, back to the journey point, you know, which, you know, I've kept saying, but it's, so in 10 years time, where do I want to be? You know, I'll be where I'll be, you know, and it's as long as I'm being, and, you know, being true to myself and true to my passions and what I'm, you know, really motivates me. And so when I think about it, it's, yeah, like the mission is on a daily basis to deliver the highest quality, natural, functional health products to people in all different walks of life. And we know if we apply that level of detail to doing that in every single small detail, you know, whether it's the writing on the side of the bottle, you know, the way the barcode is positioned, the shape of the box, you know, how we communicate the brand, the messaging, you know, take your best shot, however it is, whatever it is, we apply a level of detail and care to that individual task. That's when you know, over time you compound growth and you generate success.
Yeah, so interesting.
And taking each day as it comes. I know today for you, you've got filming to get to in Cardiff, so we won't take your time too much, but I just want to say thank you so much for the last hour or so and sharing your journey both in football and in business. It's been amazing, so thanks so much for that.
Yeah, I think there's been so many lessons to take from it. Your determination, your dedication, and everything you've talked about the last hour is not just it's not just possible to replicate it in business, but in your everyday life in sport. There's so many different ways you can use the lessons that you've just given. So really appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you both. And I think, you know, what you guys are doing and, you know, the information that you're making available to people is hopefully going to offer value to the watchers and to the community that you guys are building too. So thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Perfect. Yeah, really appreciate it.